I wanted to take a little more time at this juncture, at this very beginning of our Holy Week celebration, to instruct, encourage, and teach. First of all, we have palms, and the palms are blessed and will be available in a basket outside of the church, outside of a cathedral, under the awning, under the eave, on the side door here, probably a limited number of them, and the stay-at-home order does still apply. But if you're out and about doing other things and want to stop and pick up a palm, then you may certainly do that. But I would also encourage you to reflect upon the meaning of blessing and the meaning of the palms. The palms cut down from trees are signs of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem, but they are also signs of the transitory nature of this life. The palms start out yellow and green, but very quickly turn to straw. And yet we keep them. We keep them in our homes throughout the course of the year as a reminder of this day. And it reminds us of the fleeting nature of glory and honor, the fleeting nature of this world. These things pass. Perhaps in the past you have not reflected on the palms. You've taken them home and hopefully treated them respectfully. But they should be put in place of honor in the home, perhaps an altar corner prayer, perhaps append to a crucifix, as is common tradition, perhaps at the four corners of the house or even outside at the four corners of your property. These are traditions that we have in the church of really calling upon the blessings of the palms to guard and protect us and to constantly remind us that all that we have is passing away. But what Jesus comes to give us ultimately is permanent and eternal. Think about Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It was a moment of glory. And yet it was not something Jesus looked forward to or promoted or fostered. He endured it, tolerated it, but he knew that this moment of glory was passing. His eyes were set on the passion, on the cross, on the crucifixion. His heart was set on Calvary, on doing the will of his Father. This is what we must set our hearts to as well on this day of beginning of Holy Week. A word about blessing. Certainly we bless the palms here with holy water, and that's appropriate. But I would remind you as baptized brothers and sisters in the Lord that when you were baptized, you were given the dignity, a priestly, prophetic, and kingly dignity. You have the power to bless, and you do. Routinely and regularly at home, you gather your family around the table for meals and you say, "Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts." You pray that those gifts which you are to receive will be blessed. That blessing acknowledges your sense that these things come to us because of the goodness and mercy of God. That blessing means that you, in some ways, set those things apart for the honor and glory of God. And yes, we enjoy them, but we enjoy them somehow under God's protection and under God's will. Imagine if someone said a blessing over something that they were going to use in an irreverent manner. It would make no sense. And so I would say to you, if you have a palm tree in your yard, not your neighbor's yard, in your yard, and you want to take some palms and bring them into your home and say a blessing over those palms in your own words, reading a portion of the Passion And then simply say, Lord God, we beg you to bless these palms. May they be a reminder for us in our family of your triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and may they remind us of the fleeting nature of this life. See, as a priestly people, you can do that. And those blessings can, for your family, be more powerful than even if the bishop would bless the palms personally. I say that from my own personal experience. As a young seminarian, I would come home at summertime, and before the days of social distancing, I could visit my grandparents. My grandparents on my father's side were very devout. They were very holy. They were in church every single day. And when I would come and visit them, as I did every time, it was mandated practically, before I would leave to go back to the seminary, they would have me kneel down and they would bless me in Czech on the forehead, on my lips, and on my breast, and say a blessing over me. I can tell you that that blessing was much more significant to me than any other blessing I have ever received. So do not, my dear people, underestimate the power of your blessing for your children and your grandchildren. And when the time of social distancing is over, remember that priestly power that you have to give blessing. But not only have you been given priestly power in baptism, you've also been given prophetic power, and that's the power to teach. And it's not only a power, it is the responsibility to teach. And in these days, when your children are not able to come to church and your children are not able to go to CCD or religious education, it becomes more incumbent upon you, my dear parents, to take up more fully that responsibility which is uniquely yours, to teach your children about the faith. This is your prophetic duty and your parental duty. Do not underestimate the importance of that duty. And this is something you can and must do at home. And if you are not as well versed in the catechism as you should be, then take these days of isolation, these days of silence, these days of staying at home, to devote yourself to some kind of catechetical effort, to take the Catechism of the Catholic Church and to look at the index and to study it, and to make this time an opportunity for you to become better at your responsibility of not only teaching, but first learning, so that you can then transmit that faith to your children. And you are called to be a kingly people, to give leadership and guidance in your family home in terms of prayer, in terms of moral uprightness, in terms of fraternal correction. And these are challenging things, but they are opportunities for us at this moment of our lives. I was visiting with someone last week on the phone, that this is an opportunity for all Catholics and Christians to recognize their duty to create what the Second Vatican Council called the domestic church. You know, we have this concept of a domestic church, which is the family. It's the first core item of the church. And yet, the word that comes to my mind is we outsource teaching in religion. We outsource education, we outsource moral formation, we outsource all of those duties and responsibilities which, my dear parents, belongs to you. And this is the time for you to take up that mantle of baptism and say, we will be the people of God. We will be the domestic church that we are called to be. And if you feel ill-prepared to do that, then perhaps when we are able to gather together again, you will take more seriously that duty to really know your faith, to understand that domestic church, and to take advantage of the learning opportunities so that you can live your faith more fully and profitably. These are important things. that you can and truly must do in these days. Another part of the priestly responsibility, every time we celebrate Mass here, the priest says, "Pray, my brothers and sisters, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God, the Almighty Father." It's the priest asking you, the people of God, the priestly people of God, to pray that this sacrifice, the priests at the altar and your own, that's a prayer, my dear brothers and sisters, that you can say at home when you participate in Mass online as you do today. May this sacrifice be received. We can say that response prayer, right? That my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable to God, the Almighty Father. It's a priestly action, and we need to take this opportunity to reflect on the meaning of those words, the significance of them, and to enter into them a little more carefully and fully. We begin Holy Week today. On Tuesday at 10 o'clock, I will have a Mass which you're all invited to participate in for the school children throughout the diocese. And certainly any children, if you're not in another school session, would be certainly welcome to join in. I will address my message particularly to the youngsters in grade school. On Thursday, for Holy Thursday, it's the confection of the Eucharist. And it is something that you can, in some ways, reenact at home. The Jewish people have their beautiful Passover meal in which they and the family in that domestic church reenact the Passover events. They do that in their home. I think this is an opportunity for you to be creative. And for years with the Young People's Club, I would meet on the Wednesday before Holy Thursday. And we would gather with pita bread and grape juice, with radishes for the bitter herb, with crunchy peanut butter mixed with apple butter as the sweetness of life. And we would read a large portion of the Gospel of John, the Last Supper narrative in John. And we would spend that time in prayerful reflection on our own community, but also in some ways remembering and doing what the Lord did with his disciples on those days before his own passion and death. The domestic church can make this Holy Thursday richer than most. The same could be said on Good Friday. Nothing to stop you in your family homes from saying, listen, we're going to get a crucifix and we're going to enact our own Stations of the Cross in our home. Or at least, if there's a smaller number, to read the Stations of the Cross out loud. I will try to post a proposed set of stations perhaps this week online. But there are many examples of Stations of the Cross which you can make available to yourselves by way of online studies. The Easter Vigil, Saturday night, we will gather here at 8 p.m., 8:30.
7:30.
It will be after dark. You have to update on the time. I'm not sure exactly what time, but I'm thinking around 8 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. But you in your homes can certainly turn out all of the lights and sit in darkness for 5 minutes before that ceremony starts. And when we here in the cathedral light the Easter candle, then you at home could likewise light a candle. Light several candles in your home and allow that candlelight to be your light for the rest of the vigil. And then to sit and stand as you listen and respond to the readings and the prayers of that vigil in which we anticipate the coming of the Lord's resurrection. We cannot gather together in our local churches or in the cathedral, But that does not mean, my dear friends, that we cannot participate in these Easter events and make them real and significant for us. Just as that blessing by my grandparents stands in my life as an important moment, so also for you and for your children and your grandchildren, these Lenten days and this Holy Week can stand out as an exemplary moment in your Catholic Christian life, in your attachment to Christ, in your understanding of the faith, in your entry into the mysteries of the Passion, death, and resurrection of the Lord. It is easy for us to focus on what we are denied, what we cannot do. I ask you, I beg you, I plead with you, focus yourselves on what you can do, for what you can do is abundant and rich. I pray that these days, separated though we are days of abundant grace for all.